said, "That fat woman disgusts me." I acted like I didn't hear anything, and the next day I packed his bags, changed the locks, and served him with divorce papers. Was I wrong for what I did? Tell me if you would have done the same thing. It all started subtly, insidiously, like a slow, creeping fog that you don't notice until it's completely enveloped you. My husband, Mark, and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We met in college, young and full of dreams, convinced we were soulmates. He was charming, witty, and always knew how to make me laugh. I was a little quieter, more introspective, but he brought out a side of me I didn't even know existed. We built a life together, a cozy little home filled with our shared memories, our hopes, and our comfortable routines. We talked about having children someday, about growing old together on a porch swing, watching the sunset. It all felt so real, so solid, like a foundation that could withstand anything. But then, things began to shift. It wasn't a sudden crack, more like tiny, almost imperceptible fissures appearing in the concrete of our relationship. It started with comments, little jabs here and there, usually directed at other people. We'd be watching a movie, and he'd scoff at an actress, remarking on her weight or her perceived flaws. At first, I dismissed it. Everyone makes observations, right? And sometimes, people can be a little critical. I'd gently nudge him, "Mark, that's not very kind." And he'd just shrug, "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking." I convinced myself he didn't mean any real harm. He loved me, and that was what mattered. I wasn't like those other women he critiqued. I was his wife. Then, the comments started to trickle closer to home. Not directed at me, not overtly, but at people I knew, or even at fictional characters that resembled me in some way. One evening, my best friend, Sarah, came over for dinner. Sarah has always been a beautiful woman, inside and out, but she's always carried a little more weight than the stereotypical model. After she left, Mark turned to me, a smirk on his face. "You know, Sarah's a great girl, but she really needs to lay off the carbs. She's getting a bit wide." My stomach dropped. I tried to defend her, to point out her wonderful qualities, but he just waved his hand dismissively. "I'm just being honest. It's not attractive, that's all." I felt a knot of unease tighten in my chest, but again, I pushed it down. He wasn't talking about me. Over the next few years, these comments escalated. He started making jokes about fat people, in general, about their perceived laziness, their lack of self-control. He'd point out overweight people in public, sometimes loudly enough for them to hear, and make a disgusted face. I would cringe, my face burning with embarrassment, and try to pull him away. "Mark, please, that's horrible." I'd whisper, but he'd just laugh it off. "Relax, honey, it's just a bit of fun." It wasn't fun for me. It was chipping away at my perception of him, revealing a cruelty I hadn't seen before. I started to wonder if this was who he truly was, beneath the charming facade. The truth is, I've always struggled with my weight. I've never been obese, but I've always been on the curvier side, prone to gaining weight easily. It's something I've been self-conscious about my entire life. Mark knew this. He had always told me he loved my curves, that I was beautiful just the way I was. Those words used to be a comfort, a shield against my own insecurities. But now, every time he made a disparaging remark about someone else's weight, a little shard of fear would pierce me. Was he secretly judging me too? Was he disgusted by me? I started to watch what I ate even more carefully, to spend extra time at the gym, driven by an unspoken terror that I would become one of the fat women he so openly despised. The joy of eating, once a simple pleasure, became a source of anxiety. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday evening, a night that started like any other. We were curled up on the couch, watching a new series. It was a period drama, and one of the characters, a kind, jovial woman, was visibly larger than the other actresses. She was a good character, intelligent and compassionate, contributing significantly to the plot. Suddenly, Mark let out a guttural sound of disgust. "Ugh, look at her," he muttered, pointing at the screen. "That fat woman disgusts me. Honestly, why do they even cast people like that? It's just unwatchable." The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of shock and disbelief. It wasn't just a casual remark this time. It was raw, visceral revulsion. And it wasn't just about the actress. It was about every fat woman he had ever seen, ever judged, ever deemed unworthy. And in that moment, the terrifying realization hit me like a physical blow. He was talking about me. Not explicitly, no, but implicitly. The fear I had been suppressing for years exploded into certainty. If he felt such utter disgust for that fat woman, how could he truly feel anything but the same for me, a woman who had always battled her own weight, a woman who was, in his eyes, likely just a few pounds away from becoming that fat woman? I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my eyes burning. I acted like I hadn't heard anything, like the words hadn't sliced through me and landed directly on my most vulnerable insecurity. I just stared at the screen, my mind racing, replaying every cruel comment, every disgusted look, every subtle jab. The charming man I thought I married, the man who promised to love me unconditionally, was a stranger. He was a man filled with a venomous prejudice that I could no longer ignore, a prejudice that, I now understood, applied to me. I somehow made it through the rest of the evening, though I don't remember anything else about the show. I just nodded, feigned interest, and tried to breathe normally. When he finally fell asleep, I lay awake beside him, tears silently streaming down my face. I replayed our entire relationship in my head, searching for clues, for signs I had missed. And I realized they had always been there, small at first, growing steadily, and I, in my love and my desperate hope, had ignored them. I had rationalized them, excused them, pushed them deep down, because facing them meant facing the painful truth about the man I had chosen to build my life with. But I couldn't ignore them anymore. The disgust in his voice, the pure, unadulterated revulsion for that fat woman, had shattered everything. It wasn't just about him judging others. It was about him judging a fundamental part of who I was, or at least, who I feared I could become. It was about him, with a single phrase, destroying the safety and acceptance I thought I had in our marriage. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I had lived with this insidious cruelty for too long, letting it erode my self-worth and my trust. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted him? Would you have tried to work through it? Or would you have, like me, reached a point of no return? The next day, I woke up with a chilling clarity. The grief was immense, a heavy cloak weighing me down, but beneath it was a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to live with that kind of contempt anymore. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life walking on eggshells, constantly monitoring my appearance, terrified of becoming that fat woman who disgusted my own husband. My love for him, which I thought was boundless, had finally found its limit. It had hit the impenetrable wall of self-respect. He left for work as usual, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. The moment the front door closed, I sprang into action. I went to our bedroom and pulled out his suitcases. With trembling hands, I started packing his clothes, his toiletries, everything that belonged to him. Each item I folded felt like a definitive step towards reclaiming my life. I packed methodically, not missing a single thing, my mind oddly calm amidst the emotional chaos. Once his bags were full and sitting by the front door, I called a locksmith. It was an impulsive decision, driven by a primal need for security and a clean break, but it felt right. Within an hour, the locks were changed, and I had a new set of keys, the final physical barrier between us. Then I called a lawyer. I explained everything, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. The lawyer listened patiently, and by the end of the conversation, he had already begun the paperwork. He assured me he could serve Mark that very evening, making it a clear, undeniable statement. It felt brutal, yes, but it also felt necessary. There was no going back from this. When Mark returned home that evening, the scene that greeted him was one he clearly hadn't anticipated. His bags were by the door, the new locks gleamed on the frame, and I was standing in the living room, my face devoid of emotion. He looked confused, then angry. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice rising. "It's over, Mark," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I've packed your things, the locks have been changed, and you'll be hearing from my lawyer." He laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "What are you talking about? Are you insane? Over what?" "Over that fat woman who disgusts you," I replied, the words stinging as they left my lips. His face went slack, the color drained from it, replaced by a sudden, dawning horror. He remembered. He remembered exactly what he had said, and he finally understood the weight of his words. "Wait, honey, I didn't mean. I was just joking. You know I love you. You're not fat." He stammered, his usual charm replaced by desperate panic. "No, Mark." I cut him off, shaking my head. "You didn't mean that fat woman, but you meant every word you said. And if you can feel that kind of disgust for another human being, simply because of their appearance, then you can feel it for me, too, and frankly, I don't want to spend another day wondering if I'm going to be the next target of your disgust. I deserve better than that. I deserve to feel safe and loved, unconditionally, not judged and scrutinized." He tried to argue, to plead, to make excuses, but I stood my ground. My heart ached, a deep, profound sadness for the loss of what I thought we had. But there was no turning back. I handed him the divorce papers, already filled out with my signature. He snatched them, his eyes wide with a mixture of anger and despair. He eventually left, taking his bags and the last vestiges of our 10-year relationship with him. The aftermath was difficult. There were angry phone calls, accusations, and attempts to manipulate me, but I remained firm. My friends and family, when I explained everything, were shocked but supportive. They had seen his behavior, perhaps even rationalized it like I had, but they understood why I couldn't tolerate it any longer. Slowly, painfully, I began to heal. I rediscovered myself. The woman I had been before his criticisms started to chip away at my confidence. I started eating what I wanted, exercising because it felt good, not because of some looming fear of judgment. I learned to love my body again, curves and all. Divorce is never easy, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever been through. But in the end, it was the only choice that allowed me to maintain my dignity and my self-worth. I learned a profound lesson about listening to my gut, about setting boundaries, and about never allowing someone else's prejudice to define my value. It taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from someone who doesn't truly see or appreciate you. So, that's my story. It's a messy, painful one, but it's mine. If you've ever been made to feel less than by someone who was supposed to love you, then you know this feeling. Like this video if you were on my side, if you think I made the right decision. Subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes hearing other people's struggles helps us understand our own. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.